PTE Help, Test 23, Retell Lecture, and Summarize Spoken Text. Subscribe to PTE Help.
Now in a bonfire, you've got a small fire, those will go maybe 2 or 3 meters. When you've got a forest fire, they can be transported hundreds of meters, if not kilometers, depending on the wind and things like that. So those little embers can actually start more fires. We've also got radiation, and we've also got direct flame contact. So if one of these 2 trees was on fire and the branches were overlapping, that would spread the fire from one fuel package to another. So at the moment, we've not got any wind in this picture, which is a key driver for fires. So if we add some wind in, our firebrands get kicked off at a different angle. So these can now spread a lot further instead of just going straight up and kind of falling nicely down in a nice plume. These start getting blown by the wind that can be transported, as I said, kilometers. And also our flame contact region also gets tilted. And so these are the main fire spread mechanisms within informal settlements we have: firebrands, radiation, and direct flame contact. So we're trying to understand both the socio-political engineering issues as well as the kind of topological and geographical issues.
PTE Help, sampled 90 scores lecture response. The lecturer points out the causes of forest fires. These fires can be transported to thousands of kilometers due to winds, overlapping of trees' branches, triggering direct flame contact regions, and radiations. He further delineates that wind is the key driver, which spread it further. The lecturer hopes to determine the social, political, engineering, topological, and geographical issues behind this mechanism.
PTE Help, Test 23, Retell Lecture, and Summarize Spoken Text. Subscribe to PTE Help.
500,000 people die every year from malaria. 500,000. Except the people who die of severe malaria are mainly young children living in some of the poorest countries of the world. Now, it may surprise you to know that not everyone who gets malaria gets really sick. If we're talking about these children in Africa, of those who get malaria, about 1 in 10 will develop potentially life-threatening symptoms, and of those 1 in 10 will die. So what we need to figure out, what's different about these severe cases compared to the uncomplicated ones? Now, you probably know you get malaria by being bitten by an infected mosquito. The mosquito injects the malaria parasite into your body, where its ultimate aim is to get into your red blood cells. When it does this, it sort of hijacks the cells and forces it to display sticky projections on the outer surface. These sticky projections can latch on to other red blood cells that haven't yet been infected, and they form big clumps of cells called rosettes. And that's an example of what a rosette looks like under the microscope. These rosettes form much more commonly in the severe cases of malaria compared to the uncomplicated ones. And we think they cause problems because they cause obstruction in the tiny blood vessels throughout your body, but particularly in the brain, where it can lead to seizures, coma, and death. Now, the problem is, our current anti-malarial treatments have no effect on this process at all. They can kill a parasite, but they can do nothing to disrupt these rosettes.
PTE Help, sampled 90 scores lecture response. The speaker highlighted the fact that almost 500,000 die from malaria every year in the world. There are potentially life-threatening symptoms too, but we need to distinguish between the uncomplicated and severe cases. A malarial-infected mosquito injects the parasites into the body, which hijacks the red blood cells with sticky projections. These latch on other cells and form rosettes. These can cause seizures and lead to death.
PTE Help, Test 23, Retell Lecture, and Summarize Spoken Text. Subscribe to PTE Help.
So yeah, my talk is about flammable cities, and the context that I'm going to try and paint for you is a global one, and then we're going to have a look through what the science is and go into then a kind of case study of a research project that started 2 years ago, and go into kind of a few of the things that we're learning there and doing there to kind of basically understand the problem. So what is the problem that we're talking about? So urbanization. We have 7.5 billion people in the world currently, of which about 85% live in lower middle income countries. And there's an estimated 1 billion of people in the lower middle income countries that live in things called informal settlements. And that's about 33% of the urban population around the world live in these informal settlements. So what is I had used two terms there, lower middle income country and informal settlement. So what is a lower middle income country? So this is a map showing where those lower middle income countries are, and essentially anything from yellow, orange and red, that's a lower middle income country. The blues there are high income countries, so you can see where the kind of global distribution in terms of wealth is being related.
PTE Help, Sample 90 Scores Lecture Response. The lecturer has researched the issue of flammable cities. His case studies help to make us understand that urbanization is sprawling, especially in the low-middle-income world colonies, which encompass almost 85% of the global population. 33% of this populace live generally in flammable settlements. He also guides us by highlighting the yellow, orange and red areas on the world map, divided with respect to global wealth distribution.